Blizzard are finally doing this well. What is Bellular talking about? I will say, the cutscene, the new cinematic that dropped the other day, if you haven't seen it already, go check it out. It was a bit darker than recent Blizzard stuff. You know, the way Farak was torturing the Green Dragon. I like that stuff. A little bit of old WoW, a little bit of hardcore. Not in essence of dying and losing in Classic, but hardcore in terms of bring the war back to Warcraft. Bring some dirtiness, some grit, some grime. I feel like that last cinematic was a little hint at maybe some Mets and things to come. We'll see, but let's see what Bellular thinks is next for WoW.
Welcome back. A new cinematic has dropped, so let's get into it. Farak is back and Veranoth along with him. This cinematic is one that Blizzard have dropped right before patch 10.1.7 releases, and I think it's quite clearly been released for early marketing reasons and also to free the way for them to talk about patch 10.2, our next major patch.
True.
So, what I'm going to do today is break down and explain...
By the way, as of today, this date, 10.2, a lot of content for it is hitting the PTR, like the pre-release build, so people haven't seen it yet, but it is being downloaded. It is on the servers. So 10.2 news is going to be dropping soon. And don't forget, we got BlizzCon coming up in November. So the prediction for 10.2 right now is really end-ish of October is when we're expecting to get 10.2, but we'll see.
Everything that you need to know, and believe me, there's quite a bit. Very big picture then. We see Farak interrogating a green dragon. He wants into the Emerald Dream so he can get the world tree that's been growing there, and he clearly is wanting to dabble in more enhanced interrogation techniques, only for Veranoth to disagree, stop him, them to have a bit of a scuffle, and him to cool off a little.
By the way, he was dominating her. I don't know if you guys noticed the way the fire's pushing and she's arching back. Look at his smile compared to her strain. He clearly has some of that shadow flame, strength in him.
Little, and say that yes, he will find another way. That is the very high-level summary, but there are so many details to break down here. First, you might have wondered, who's that elf? Well, that elf is Grithius, who is Merithra's son. She is the current leader of the Green Flight.
I didn't know he was her son.
Is kind of back as of patch 10.0's questing. However, she's not retaking her post as Aspect. And you'll have met that elf in your 10.0 questing. Next then, what is he hiding? I know not everybody did the relevant quest, and there is a little more than just that quest to understand. So, very big picture, right? Teldrassil was burned. Big mistake.
Kind of
Many night elves died. Tronda went rather far for vengeance. That led us through that whole storyline that culminated with her being granted this.
The PMS questline was a good one.
This is the Sister's Tear, and it was given to her by Elune and the Winter Queen. This essentially seems to be like the
Everyone
Tear of
thinks
Elune.
that Veranoth and the Winter Queen look too much alike. I kind of agree. It does feel like they kind of reused her asset and just changed it up a little bit, but they do have very much the same head shape and hairstyle and everything.
Tear of Elune. Now, the Tear of Elune is one of the Pillars of Creation artifacts that we found during the Legion expansion, and that itself is kind of curious. The Tear of Elune back then unlocked Light's Heart. Light's Heart was the core of the Naru Zira. That's the Naru that Illidan would go on to blast. And it also contained a message from Tyranian. That's what, of course, led us to meeting the Army of the Light and the pretty insane end of the Legion expansion. Now, this is kind of odd. It was a Pillar of Creation, a Titan artifact. However, it was named after Elune. That's quite curious. Elune isn't a Titan. We would then later meet the Titan called Aeonar, who was hiding out on a world called Elunaria, which is also rather curious. Now, roughly at that time, Khadgar speculated, based on a book he found in Dalaran...
Can I be honest? He's hinting at all this Elune stuff. I kind of hope we're not going in that direction, because I don't want to know more about Elune. Not because I don't find Elune interesting, but I like the mysteriousness of her. I don't want to know exactly what she is, what kind of god she... I think the Titans were cooler when we knew less. Back when they were just like this mysterious force. Come, super rare on me, yeah. Yeah, they were like super rare come, exactly, Tidewell. We didn't know much about them. They were very mysterious and ominous, and now they're kind of, they lost their luster. And maybe intentionally so, but I don't want Elune to... I don't want to know everything about her. I like the mysteriousness of her. When Night Elf NPCs talk about her, I like that we don't know much about her. Yeah, we've been dripping too many reveals in lore, and we're not better for it. I agree. Yeah, exactly. There's something to mysterious, ominous powers, that you don't really understand in the background. I prefer it that way. I don't know. I don't prefer mysterious villains like in the foreground. I don't like the whole, we don't know the reason Zoval is doing his shit or why he got his nipple piercings or anything like that. I don't like that shit. I want, the Lich King. His motives were very clear. He wants to fucking turn the entire world into his scourge. That makes sense, okay? There's no hidden motive there. But I don't need to know everything about every single fucking, like the first ones and all that. We're getting too far into it, man. Just give me some ominous lore in the background and give me some foreground with some real lore that makes sense.
That Elune actually
Cataclysm
created
happened too soon,
Zira.
probably.
Yeah, Elune creating the Naru. Isn't that a bit of a crazy thing? Now, the Winter Queen is seen as Elune's sister.
Yeah, oh yeah,
and
the
we know
jailer.
that because she referred to
Totally agree
Zara
with that.
as her sister's pet. Now, all of these connections are going back to things we've talked about in Legion, and they are kind of getting more clear. Anyway, we now see the Sister's Tier, this object of power made by both Elune and, of course, by the Winter Queen.
Yeah.
This makes me then also think of Titans in the Tier of Elune. Like, why was Aenar on Lunaria? Why is there a pillar of creation called the Tier of Elune, even though Elune isn't a Titan? And also, why don't you check out, the Collector's Edition merch? Look at that for our first game, The Pale Beyond. It's on store.ballior.games. How neat. To those other questions, Aenar's full title is Life Binder. And oddly enough, that was also Alex Stras's title, and maybe that will soon turn out to be the point. Aenar binds life, controls it. And when in peril, she fled to Lunaria. Her pillar of creation was the Tier of...
She's almost the anti-free will, if you think about it. Don't forget, guys, you might think the old gods are the bad guys. They gave us our free will.
Elune, so very clearly...
With the curse of flesh.
Yes, she was allied to Elune. And to me, this suggests that, yes, Elune and the Titans worked together in the deep past. Now, per the Tauran mythological story, Eyes of the Earth Mother, Musha, which is the Tauran name for Elune, and Anche basically traveled off through the beyond to fight the source of corruption, which clearly was, we think, void. Now, this is not a tangent, okay? Let me cook. The whole deal of the Incarnates, right? Their motivation is to free the world, Azeroth, from the Titans' grasp.
Yeah, true, but their motivations and the way they want to do it are kind of different. Eridicron wants to completely fuck them up, right? He wants to just kill them. He doesn't give a shit about what happens to the world after he does so. He's on a vengeful spree to kill the Titans. Then you got Farak, who he wants power. He's after power. It's very obvious the way he took on the void and created the shadow flame. He has no concern for what the power could do to him. He just wants power. And in the end of the last cinematic, he says the power will be ours. Now, when he says that, is he talking about these three, or is he talking about himself and the new voices inside of his head? That's an interesting thought. And then finally, Viranoth, she's the most pure of them. She's the one who's really not after vengeance or anything like that. She hates what the Aspects and the Titans did, but she just wants freedom. She wants peace, security, and she wants to not have to worry about, little hatchlings being corrupted in the eggs and all that shit. She wants freedom away from that shit. 3 different motivations to take down the Titans.
So why does going into the Emerald Dream to, squish a tree and steal a seed play a role in that plan? Well, if the Sisters Tier is anything like the Tier of Elune, then it obviously does have some sort of Titan link, or at the very least, a link to the Titans' plans. Elune and the Pantheon are obviously allied, and if Elune created Zira, then you could almost see this kind of alliance even with some of the light, or at least using the light. Now, let's bring it back to Farak. He wants the power in the great tree's heart.
Yeah, he's after power.
In 10.0 questing, this new world tree is planted. We later find out it's called a Mirdrasil, and it is planted using the Sisters' Tier. So quite clearly, it's not really the tree that he wants, it is the Sisters' Tier that Farak wants. I think that much was always clear. But what I've drawn out today is the connection between an item like the Sisters' Tier, how the Tiers of Elune, it could be a part of a broader Titan plan, and therefore I think it draws our attention to the connections between the Emerald Dream and the Titans. Now, one thing we've never 100% known is how the dream was made, and I actually think we might learn it in the next patch. From what I understand, there is a primal life lands, right? But that place that you go to, called the Emerald Dream, that you can walk around in and see stuff, from all of our lore, that's something the Titans shaped into being.
Yeah.
And it seems to me
I
like...
thought the way I understood the Emerald Dream was it was supposed to kind of be a blueprint for what Azeroth should be, right? It was supposed to be like, this is the perfect version of a life plane, essentially.
like the Tear of Elune has actually got something to do with that. And if Elune and the Winter Queen represent the mortal cycle in the realms of life and death, then yeah, them having something to do with harnessing the dream to protect Azeroth, that makes a hell of a lot of sense. Therefore, absolutely no wonder why Farak wants that seat. And of course, this even ties up Night Elf society, given that they are priestesses who worship Elune and druids, right? So this kind of unification of Elune and nature, it's something we are very much seeing here.
Right.
Okay, Farak then, he'll obviously gain power through the Sisters' Tear, and through that he'll be able to weaken the Titans' hold on the world. Now, remember patch 10.0's Primalist future? Remember how it was all frozen? How did that happen? Well, here is Veranoth freezing a tree in the 10.1 introduction cinematic. Many would say that's foreshadowing. So if she freezes the tree in the dream, does that maybe spill out into the material plane?
Yeah, I didn't think
Maybe
about
it
that.
does. Maybe she even does that to put out some calamitous, terrible fire that Farak starts. Who knows? Anyway, claim power, stop the Titans, whatever. That's what they want to do. However, I'd argue the far more interesting thing is
I
the
think
character.
Veranoth and Farak are going to fight. We had a little sample of it in the cinematic. Again, if you haven't seen it, go see it. But they're going to fight, and probably a fight to the death. And I assume, actually, because Farak is probably stronger than her now that he's, taken on the Void, I actually imagine Alexstrasza and all the other dragon aspects helping Veranoth, and Veranoth probably not liking it, but accepting their help to defeat Farak, and that may be creating like, oh, now there's this unspoken alliance, right?
Interactions.
Let's go kill a Ridicron.
Farak is obviously
kind of thing.
gloriously reveling in the chaos. He's magnetic to watch, and clearly he's getting out of hand. So much so that I'm fairly sure he will turn Veranoth to our side. And you don't need to look close. The more unhinged he gets, the more purple you see streaming out of his eyes, and that purple is Shadow Flame. In 10.1, Farak bursts into Zarlek Cavern, doesn't really give a toss about Aberrus, and goes straight for the Caldera, where he can basically infuse himself with Shadow Flame.
Right.
Now, Shadow Flame is a mix of fire and void magic that was heavily studied by Neltharion in his laboratory called Aberrus. Now, it's extremely potent, right? But it's inherently deleterious to the mind. It sort of corrupts. When Sibelian got blasted with some Shadow Flame, before we saved him, it burned him, but it also started speaking to him. He started hearing more things.
Right.
So, yes, it's exactly...
That's why when Farak says the power will be ours at the end of the cinematic, I think he's talking about himself and the voices in his head, not the three primalists.
The kind of thing that happened that sort of hastened Neltharion's turn into the character we would come to know as Deathwing. So clearly then, it is exaggerating the more extreme parts of a person's personality. For Neltharion, it made him even more sort of cold and unhinged. In Farak's case, it's just making him even more of a total crackhead. Veranoth then, if you're not caught up on her, basically, we recently learned that her and Alexstrasza were perhaps best friends, maybe a bit more, whatever, back in the day.
Maybe a bit
However,
more, what?
Alexstrasza, in her position as queen, allowed the Titan forces to experiment on and infuse eggs with order magic. And yeah, that led to irreconcilable differences. That much was made very clear in her recent conversation with Alexstrasza. Now, that conversation ended to the effect of Veranoth saying, you know what, now vengeance is all I've got left. But contrast that with what she says in this cinematic. How does she get Farak to snap out of it? She does that by reminding him of their true goal and purpose, to free the world from the Titan's influence. So I think quite clearly then, still feeling very betrayed at Alexstrasza, she snapped and said that to hurt her. But right now, well, she actually does seem to believe in her cause. If vengeance was the only goal, then why stop Farak? Clearly, executing defenseless prisoners is not something she is down for. At least, it's not the first thing she wants to do. Anyway, all of this points towards her flipping sides eventually, and I think especially because Farak is clearly quite a bit more powerful than her. And what way to compare power levels in a fantasy setting by having a good old battle
good
of
old
the
Dragon Ball Z or Dragon Ball Showdown powers. And like I said, you can look every time you look at this, you can clearly tell who's having the easier time with this fight.
Beams. In this case, Farak's colored beam is clearly winning. But
Yeah.
look closely, he doesn't seem to be cheating. There's no purple, right? No purple. So this is him clearly overpowering her, not using Shadow Flame. So this is what I think is happening then. I think that Farak is trying to hide the full extent to which he's going a little bit mad and loving it. He doesn't use the Shadow Flame to best her. At the very start of the cinematic, she doesn't see him using Shadow Flame. It's only really visible through his eyes, and in the middle of the cinematic, Veranoth seems to catch a glimpse of the Shadow Flame, and as soon as she does that, she acts to stop him. So I think Farak is trying to keep the full extent of things from her, especially because he did not use it to best her in a fight. If he did, then she would clearly no longer see him as an ally, and when he does stop, it's because she appeals to reason. And demonstrating that that reason still works on him is what will allow Farak to still have Veranoth on his side, right? And note that that appeal to reason works whenever he is not using the Shadow Flame. Much of him is still there, but the corrupting aspect...
It works for now, but I mean, we all know how corruption is. You know, it's an overtime kind of thing.
Shadow Flame
disintegration of the mind.
And while at the end of the cinematic he does say ours, referring to the power they're going to claim, I think that if at that time his eyes were glowing purple, he very much would have said mine, because I think that's absolutely what the voice actor was going for.
I don't know. I think when he says ours, he's talking about the voices in his head, personally.
Right. The Sisters tier is clearly part of an old accord between the Titans and their ally Elune. Or at least they've made a new Tears of Elune, and we know the Tears of Elune was clearly used towards Titan ends. I suspect that Elune perhaps left her post to maybe aid the Titans in their broad mission, or to help, go along with the Titans to help, fight off chaos and all of that stuff. Maybe she saw the others in her realm as perhaps, being a bit of a stick in the mud about it all. I mean, why does Xal'atath call Elune an upstart goddess? That's still one we're puzzling through. And yes, part of prying Azeroth from the Titan's grasp will be damaging the dream, severing the link. Who knows what exactly, but Titan fingerprints are all over life as we see it in the game. They're all over the Emerald Dream as well. And funnily enough, in patch 10.1.5's Time Rifts, we actually see that uncontrolled life actually defeats the Titans. So clearly an accord was reached with Elune. Elune, who seems to be a character from the Pantheon of Life, and obviously Aeonar, known as Life Binder, right? So whatever's going on there is key to our present situation, and I think it's stuff we'll learn quite soon. For some miscellaneous things to wrap us up, 10.1.7 sees us do Dream Surges, where we seemingly protect the dream and kill Druids of the Flame, Druids who clearly have joined up with the Primalists and Farak for very obvious fiery reasons.
Yeah,
10.2
fire loves fire, man. That makes sense, okay.
And will be our Emerald Dream patch.
That's about as deep as that story goes.
That patch. I think 10.2 will likely see us learn more about this
on vacation, I really miss WoW.
The Titans, and
enjoy your vacation.
I think Farak will likely be the end boss
we'll be waiting
of the
when
patch,
you get back.
and that Veranoth will likely join us, or at the very least turn neutral. I think that she'll, in the very end of things, become the aspect of the primal dragons. After all, there is room for a 6th dragon atop Valdrakken. As for Ridicron, I think that Veranoth suspects something of him, but does not know how far he's going to go. And certainly based on her dialogue, she is not pro-Azeroth being voided and destroyed purely for vengeance, right? That's just not what she wants. So, 10.2, Farak is the main boss. Veranoth will probably be our enemy at the start, but perhaps not by the end. If she is disillusioned because of Farak, then the seeds of suspicion over Ridicron...
It's interesting that Farak is probably going to... he's probably going to be the boss of 10.2, but then will there be a 10.3? That's been a question for a while. A lot of us have been saying no, including myself. I haven't thought there's going to be a 10.3, which would mean we're not going to kill a Ridicron in this expansion, and he continues on to the next one. Is that what it seems like the consensus is starting to be? I don't know. If there is a 10.3, he's the obvious choice for the boss. But if there isn't, he continues on into maybe seeing, he goes off into the void portal and he doesn't come back for a while. We don't see him until, the end of the next expansion or something.
Unicron's methods that were planted by Alexstrasza will receive all the nutrients they need to flourish. And as a final note, I think the voicing here was excellent. I think the direction was excellent. I think this was a terrific cinematic, and based on where we
I don't think we're going
were
to kill
in the
her.
past with how villains were being treated in Warcraft.
You're talking
this
about
is
Viranoth, Malden. I don't think we're going to kill her, actually. I think she's going to join our side and help us defeat Farak by the end of by the end of 10.2.
so much better. Very much gone are the days of the jailer. While I think narratively not all, of the wrong things have been righted, I do think that at the core, having compelling villains with compelling performances who are actually memorable and stand out, I actually think this expansion is doing a great job at that.
Yeah,
so
better.
that is it
Don't know
for
about
today's
great,
video.
but
I'm
better.
going to have a real nice one for you tomorrow. And if you want to support what we're doing, you can check out store.bellular.games, where, hey man, art book for our game. Hell yeah.
Check it out.
As well as other things. So, have a great day. See you next time.
Yeah, a lot of this is really cool. I enjoyed that cinematic. It was a nice one to watch. Farak's definitely losing his mind. I think Viranoth's going to join our side. And what happens with the Ridicron the rest of this expansion? I have no freaking idea. But we'll find out soon.